My name is Bill and I'm with the Institute of Internal Auditors, and I'm here today with Stacy and Brian to discuss third-party risk. Are there any regulatory challenges that are aligned with third-party risk?
Sure. So there's your historical ones around anti-money laundering, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977. So they've been around a while, Regulation P. But the two most recent ones are probably the OCC guidance issued in October of 2013, around 2013-29, and then the Fed guidance issued in December of 2013, around 13-19. And they're both very similar, but basically saying, hey, you need to assess your third-party risks, and you need to have a program in place to manage those risks. And they were addressed to the CEOs and the Chief Risk Officer saying, hey, you guys have got to put these programs in place. So as a financial services organization, we are doing everything we can to accommodate the Fed and OCC guidance that was put out in 2013.
Yeah, and I think the knock-on effect of the regulatory risk is obviously a lot of the fines and sanctions that are being issued out to organizations of all different kinds, whether it's through the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and fines that are coming through there, anti-money laundering sanctions that have gone, privacy breaches and the fines associated with those. I mean, you're talking tens of millions of dollars in fines, tens of millions of dollars in money back to consumers. Plus the penalties involved with those things, the financial risk and the reputation loss of business, as a downstream effect. So I think the regulatory risk and the atmosphere that's out there for all businesses, financial services obviously is where we spend a lot of our time, but I think, data breaches are alive and well at a lot of organizations outside of financial services as well. So I think, fines and censures and all those things are critical regulatory risks associated with third parties.
It seems like there's a great need for collaboration within the business with many of the partners that you work with. Can you talk a little bit about how that may add additional challenges given the complexity?
Sure. So depending on the maturity and the state of your framework, we really try to push accountability and risk ownership to the first line of defense. They own the risk, they've got to manage the risk. And then we partner closely with them to make sure that they do know their accountability. The second line provides a challenge function, right? So the third-party risk management office usually sits in the second line, and they provide a challenge to the framework that's out there and sets the framework. So we work with both the first and second line to make sure, again, the accountability, the awareness of the policies and procedures out there and people are executing. The difficult part is there's a subject matter expert for each one of those risks that we talked about: strategic risk, financial risk, insurance risk, right? And so you also have to have risk stewards that work with the first line to make sure they're covering off on all the inherent risks as they go through their assessments, right? So there's a lot of partnering that needs to go on between internal audit, the second line, the risk stewards, and then the folks that actually own it, the first line. And then all that needs to be bubbled up and escalated to executive committee and the board. So a lot of coordination that goes on.
Yeah, I think the collaboration in something like third-party risk, just given how pervasive it is in organizations, is critical because, as Stacy indicated, the roles and responsibilities across the different lines of defense, are very clear, but because it's such a big process that there's going to be gaps. And so you almost need all three of those kind of working together because they ultimately have the goal of protecting the organization as a whole, right? So audit isn't just checking to see that, risk management did what they did, isn't just checking to see what the business did. They're all kind of working towards that kind of common objective of kind of keeping the organization out of trouble. So I think coordination on something like third-party risk is critical to its success.
Sure. Would you say that the audit committee and the board is very much aware of third-party risk?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, all our critical vendors, the status of those vendors, the risk reduction, or maybe issues that needed to get escalated are communicated to the board when we meet with them on a regular basis. So yes, they are very well aware.
Yeah, and even just the questions that are out there from audit committees around how is an organization managing its third-party risk. I mean, anytime you pick up the paper and there's a data breach that's out there at another organization, I'm sure audit committee members and other boards of directors are calling the likes of Stacy and other chief audit executives to find out what are we doing around this topic, how would we prevent this from happening, do we have the right mechanisms in place. So it's probably one of the many topics that falls on the radar of boards of directors and audit committees.
Thank you both for your time today and for your great insights on third-party risk.
Thank you.
Thank you.